Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And our first order of business is our land acknowledgement. And I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. Also would like to remind people to turn off your cell phones, and hopefully we can remind you to turn them back on before you leave. All right, we have a motion moved by Susan Irwin and seconded by Danny Meeks, that the rules of procedure order be amended to move item number 9, delegations, and item number 11, public meetings, up in the agenda order to follow items number 5, mayor's remarks. And further, that the agenda for the regular council meeting held August the 8th, 2023 be approved as, are there any amendments, Kathy?
No, there are not, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so approved as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof by any person around the table on any item? I have one, and that is 7D, accounts payable. My son-in-law owns K&L Renovations and has done work on the Fire Hall District 3. Unfortunately, he doesn't give me any money, but I need to declare that. So the deputy mayor will take the seat when accounts payable comes at 7D. Philip? Okay. And approval of minutes. Motion is moved by Dan Meek, seconded by Susan Irwin, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held July the 11th, 2023 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carried. Mayor's remarks, I'll just keep them short. I attended the Charlotte Lake Property Owners Annual General Meeting last Saturday. Kennebec is coming up on the 12th and Eagle Lake is on the 19th. So representatives in those areas, if you'd like to come out, it's usually a good meeting. Susan got to the Charlotte Lake one. Lots of questions, and short-term rentals always comes up. So it will come up again, I'm sure.
I think Chief and Deputy Chief are going to Kennebec.
Oh, okay, good. Good to have the fire department there. Parham Fair, 18th and 19th, and the 20th is the demolition derby. So be there or be square, right?
18th.
19th is the Saturday.
Yeah, so it's the 18th.
Oh, it's the Saturday. Okay, so there's nothing on the Sunday. See, I got that mixed up. So the 18th and 19th. So it should be a good time. This is year, do we know? 100? No, we don't know the year, but it's the only fair in Frontenac County. So hopefully many people will get there because we need to keep our fair going. Anything else to add by any member of council? Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The beach bash this Saturday.
Right.
At the beach in Charlotte Lake.
The beach bash.
Yes.
Country Music Association of Ontario. Starts at 6:30, goes till 10. There's food and music. Right? Bring your own lawn chair.
It's advertised on.
Oh, and a beer tent.
Yes.
Or two.
Yeah, it's advertised on the Kingston Country Station too.
Okay,
so.
Good. All right. Nothing else to add. We'll move on. And there's no deferred items. So now we're going to move the delegation up. And our first delegation is Mark Howes and Arlene Ewens to talk about St. James Anglican Church Memorial Proposal. Oh, sorry, Kath. I didn't.
Kathy's going to do the
Come on up to the table. There's a button there. Push that and the red light will come on. So just go ahead when you're ready.
Madam Mayor and members of council, will you please bear with me on this? I speak to you this evening on behalf of the St. James Anglican Church Group. Our vision: to create a beautiful and solemn memorial space to commemorate the 133-year-old St. James Anglican Church, which perished in a fire in 2020. A rationale: St. James Anglican Church had been the spiritual home for more than a century of parishioners who married, worshiped, had baptisms, and other services in the church. Descendants of many of those families and many former parishioners still reside in Parham and other central Frontenac localities. While the congregation grew smaller over the years, the passion and devotion of the parishioners remained strong, and the loss of the church remains a very painful event. The church was also a visual anchor for the small but proud village of Parham, a landmark so familiar to many travelers on Highway 38 who pass by on a daily basis. Many Central Frontenac residents, and especially those who live right in the village proper, are reminded daily of the loss and the terrible circumstances surrounding the fire. This memorial space would offer a tangible way for healing to occur.
And if I could just add my personal experience with that, I do actually live right across the road from where the church was. So I have good memories of the church bell, ringing on Sundays and that type of thing. So obviously that's been a loss. It was, we weren't hearing the church bell because of COVID had happened. And then this just obviously silenced it forever, unfortunately. But when we got together to talk about this, we talked about how it's kind of like a loss without a funeral. And the vacant lot just sort of sits there with no closure. And the bell would be a reminder of that. You've got me emotional.
There is added value in the continued beautification of all the townships, wards, and villages, especially when the costs would be fairly minimal and the buy-in from community would be significant. The magnificent church bell, which presided over the village from within the grand steeple, survived the fire, is a clarion call to not let the church be forgotten or its memory to be diminished. On a personal note, I was a firefighter at the time. I'd been a firefighter for 30 years. And I remember very well seeing the flames go up the church. It haunts me to this day. For me, it's something that I to have some closure to this event. I do not fault the authorities that were there that night, the police and other authorities. I do not fault the authorities and how they handle the situation. But us who serve this township as firefighters, we know that when we are responding to a call, we are there to do a job. And when you are unable to do that job, you feel handcuffed when you're not able to do anything. So it was heartbreaking to see it go.
That's for sure. And I'm going to talk about the property, the site, and then that will bring back in a couple of reasons why we thought this is the best site for the Bell to go. And the initial proposal would be number one, that the Township of Central Frontenac enter into a negotiation with the Anglican Diocese to purchase the parcel of land, which is beside the post office across from my home, currently owned by the Anglican Diocese, the former site of the St. James Anglican Church, for the cost of $2, and undertake associated costs of insuring the property in the future, conditional on the Anglican Diocese undertaking the funding and installation of a suitable monument encasing the church steeple bell and providing initial improvements to the property to create a beautiful and solemn memorial site. The site, likely familiar to most of you, is relatively small. It's 10987 Road 38 in Parham. A note here is that additional cost in the future could be limited to cutting the grass, which my husband already does. He's seeded it and he mows it all through the spring, summer, fall to keep it looking neat and tidy, just out of the goodness of his heart. Village is beautiful. Do give him a little bit of money for gas. That's just also very kind of them, but he does it. He doesn't mind doing it, and he'll continue to do that. Also, we would have volunteers from our St. James Anglican Church group, and possible partners would provide other beautification such as garden installation, upkeep, or provision of benches, a bench or benches. We're not exactly sure how that would go, but we feel this is a good location for it. And Mark did have a reason why another area that was mentioned might not be as good of a location. The spot designated at the top of the sort of the T at 38.
Yeah, when I was here earlier this winter, I was allocated a parcel of land to possibly put up the bell and the sign. But I understand the village is beautiful. Has always put something in that parcel of land every spring and summer that stays there over the spring and the summer. The second reason is, being served 30 years on the fire department, I've seen a number of accidents right there at that corner. I've seen people do a Hail Mary right up that embankment towards the tracks, right up in there.
I have too. I live right there. I see it.
Okay,
And there was another reason, but I'm having a senior's moment and I can't remember it.
I know you said it was too close to the tracks.
Oh, yeah, it was too close to the,
I'm hitting the bell and it's too
yeah,
close to the
it was
tracks.
too close to the rail tracks. Once the ownership is transferred, approval of the site plan for the monument and associated improvements to ensure compliance with bylaws, road allowance regulations, and other township considerations. Recognize the St. James Anglican Church Group as partners who work with the Anglican Diocese in providing consultation about the design and features of the monument and associated improvements. Associated improvements refers to a suitable lawn constructed to house and showcase the monument appropriately.
And we'd also have for item number 4, permit the St. James Anglican Church Group to act as partners in overseeing the property by contributing to, sorry, I guess I'll just grab that. I'm not sure. I think it we heard, but by contributing to its maintenance and beautification with approval from council. And I've got a first note: future improvements such as flower gardens, installation of a bench or benches would be undertaken in stages with fundraising, in-kind contributions or labor by the St. James Anglican Church Group with approval from council, similar to the arrangements made and relationship established in Charlotte Lake with the Railway Heritage Park Group. And the St. James Anglican Church Group will formalize, expand its membership, and reach out to further partners to enhance the project, such as Villages Beautiful. One group member is also a member of this group, Arlene Ewens, who's sitting behind me, and Mark and myself, and she's been a member for over 25 years. And her twin does a lot too. Marlene also does a ton of stuff to beautify the village. So both very appreciated.
Okay. I'll get you to wrap up now and then we can get questions from council.
Yep. For the process, the representatives from Central Frontenac conduct the transaction through Alex Pearson, the financial officer of the Anglican Diocese, which will include the necessary approvals, contractual agreements, reassuming associated costs from the Anglican Diocese. These initial steps would be necessary procures to moving forward to develop proposals in terms of the design, scope, installation of the monument and grounds, which would be done through consultation by the St. James Anglican Church Group, the Anglican Diocese, and the Township of Central Frontenac. The final plan would be submitted to the Central Frontenac Township for approval. We seek approval in principle for this project. I'd like to thank Madam Mayor and members of council for the opportunity to discuss this matter.
Okay.
And I'll try my best to answer some of your questions.
Okay. Questions or comments? Nikki. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for bringing this forward and bringing this proposal here. I totally agree that there was never any closure after the fire, and to have the church bell put there and be a monument where people can sit and think, have a space to reflect would be great. So again, thank you for bringing this forward.
Okay. Anyone else? I have a motion, and the motion is moved by Bill Everett, seconded by Dan Meeks. The council received the presentation from Kathy and Mark Howes on behalf of St. James Anglican Church for information, and further that council consider their proposal and have staff bring back a report to the next council meeting. So staff would work with you to get those details, put them down, and bring a recommendation to us. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Very good proposal and well thought out. We'll get staff to work with you over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, now we are going to move to a public meeting on the zoning bylaw amendments. So this is a whole different part of the meeting, so I have some notes. Tonight's meeting is a statutory public meeting held under the authority of Section 34 of the Planning Act. This meeting was also advertised in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose of the meeting is to present the details of a draft zoning bylaw housekeeping amendment. The intent of the bylaw amendment is to update the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw to meet current legislative requirements and circumstances. The format of the meeting is as follows. Glenn Tunnick, our planning consultant, will make a presentation on the draft zoning bylaw amendment. Members of the public may ask questions after the presentation. Any member of the public may also make a formal presentation after the consultant's presentation. Before you ask a question or make a presentation, I would ask that you state your name and address so that this can be recorded by the clerk. This will protect your appeal rights under the Planning Act. I am required by the Planning Act to advise you that if you do not make an oral presentation or submit written comments before the amending bylaw is passed, you will not be entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of Central Frontenac to the Ontario Land Tribunal. I will now ask Mr. Tunnick to make his presentation, and it will be on the screen there so everyone can see.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of council and members of the gallery. It's always a pleasure to be here and to attend council meetings and to have the pleasure of working for the Township of Central Frontenac. So thanks to council for awarding me the opportunity. And I do want to publicly say a sincere thanks to staff You have a wonderful staff who are diligent and have worked very hard to help with this particular process, and I'd like that to be recognized. And with council's indulgence, I think I can ask for that. I have with me tonight my sister, all the way from St. Catharines, and in 40 years of working as a planner, she's never attended a meeting that I've made a presentation to. So, with your indulgence, Madam Mayor and council. So this evening is a public meeting, as the mayor mentioned. Bylaw 2011-52 was updated in 2022 at your request by bylaw 2022-61. It included an update to the text and a new set of schedules. And to my understanding, there was no appeal of that particular bylaw. And that's obviously good, because it reflected that the public supported the bylaw. Now, in working with a brand new bylaw, or a bylaw that's been substantially changed, there's often a need for what's called a housekeeping amendment. A little tweaking of the bylaw here and there to reflect changes that maybe council have discovered as necessary, or staff have discovered as necessary. And of course, I think this council knows that the premier and council have amended the Planning Act more than once in this last year or so. Doug Ford's objective is to construct 1.5 million homes in Ontario over the next decade. And it's his expectation, as well as the provincial government, that municipalities will not only participate, but in fact, it's mandatory for council to make changes to some of their planning documents as a result of the provincial legislation. And part of the changes that are proposed in this amending bylaw reflect what the Ford government is requesting you as a council to undertake. So there are changes that arise from Bill 23 and Bill 97. Some of the changes were recommended by your solicitor as well, and I thank Mr. Fleming for his input. It's always appreciated. And I would note that some of the changes are intended to benefit economic development, to try and reduce the restrictions, if you wish, and provide some opportunity for development. Next slide, please. So getting on to the proposed changes, one of the first changes is to make the bylaw gender neutral. As we know, the definition of gender has changed over time. And we want to make sure that the bylaw is inclusive and equitable to all people that might be affected by the bylaw, irregardless of their sexual identity. Next slide. There are a number of changes to the zoning bylaw. And the solicitor had indicated, and I was certainly in agreement, that definitions should not contain performance standards. In other words, they shouldn't set out requirements for height or lot area or things of that nature. So the definitions, some of the definitions were changed to remove the performance standards and place them elsewhere in the bylaw. Because if you take somebody to court, or have to take somebody to court, you can't prosecute them on the basis of a definition. It doesn't make sense. So some changes were made in that respect. A new definition for a distillery was added, and again, here's an indication of an economic opportunity in the municipality. The definition for a farm was changed to be more inclusive. It was largely restricted to sheep operations, or part of the amendment, part of the definition, and so that was changed. And another economic benefit was the change in the definition to a marina, stipulating that it didn't always have to be on the waterfront. There are marinas that are inland, and so again, we wanted to remove that restriction should somebody want to establish a marina that doesn't have water frontage. Next slide, please. There were, I guess, one of the major changes was with respect to the elimination of the floor area requirements in a number of the sections of the bylaw. And the intent here was to be consistent, as I alluded to earlier, with the Ford government's legislation designed to make housing more attainable and more affordable by allowing dwellings with smaller floor areas to be constructed, as long as they comply with the building code. And the density will in fact be governed by lot coverage rather than a floor area. So what that means is that if I come to you and ask for a building permit and my house is only 300 square feet in floor area, I could build as long as I meet the requirements of the building code according to Andy's understanding of the building code requirements. So we're not penalizing people by wanting to build something that's smaller than what might be a norm in your municipality. Typically, houses that are constructed here in Central Frontenac are anywhere from 1,200 square feet to maybe 2,000 or something of that sort. But now people are looking for more affordable and attainable housing, and you're seeing an influx of tiny homes in municipalities. In fact, the city of Kingston, as an example, has a tiny home subdivision that they've developed, you see. So tiny homes, these are actually specifically regulated in the building code, 17.5 square meters in floor area. So anything from a tiny home upwards would be permitted in most of the zones, or in all of the zones that permit residential development. Next slide. Another change, somewhat consistent with the requirements of the Planning Act, is to delete a sleep cabin as a permitted use in the R1 zone, because the R1 zone is intended to provide for up to 3 units per lot, meaning the principal dwelling can be subdivided internally to create an apartment unit. And you can also have an ancillary unit on the property. And if you allow only a sleep cabin, you effectively penalize somebody that wants to put in an ancillary residential unit in the rear yard of the property. So again, it's trying to encourage more housing to be made available in your community for people that want to move to Central Frontenac. And we've also eliminated something else that can penalize people. Is the bylaw had 2 standards. One standard for somebody that wanted to construct a single detached dwelling on a residential waterfront lot, and then a higher standard if you wanted the dwelling plus a bunkie. Well, that penalizes somebody that builds the residential dwelling and then later on wants to have a bunkie added and doesn't have the lot area. So we're eliminating that, which obviously encourages further development in the rural area. Next slide. The proposed changes to the holding zone provisions for Garrison Shores is something that was identified by Tony Fleming, and it's also identified by staff, and that's to make it very clear on what the requirements are if you want to remove the H zone in the Garrison Shores development. And the clarification is to ensure that an adequate sewage and water supply system are provided before the H is lifted. Again, trying to make the bylaw simpler to understand by the public, by those affected by such development. Next slide. The proposed changes also include a reflection of a reversal, if you wish, of Mr. Ford. There were many submissions that were made on the particular issue of site plan control as a result of Bill 23. What Bill 23 said is that you could not apply site plan control to development of less than 10 residential units. And that kind of discriminates against a municipality like Central Frontenac, where you want to use site plan control to ensure that waterfront development is environmentally sustainable over the long term. So the Ford government reversed their position under Bill 97. And what they're saying is that you can apply site plan control to residential development within 120 meters of the shoreline of a property. So the bylaw was changed to reflect that particular change and to ensure that you can use that important planning tool to ensure the environmental sustainability of waterfront properties. Next slide. So my recommendation to council as a result of, as I say, input by staff, the solicitor, And my review and changes to the Planning Act is that the zoning bylaw amendment reflecting the housekeeping changes be passed, obviously subject to the requirements of the Planning Act. That means that if you do adopt a bylaw and somebody appeals, somebody that's participated in the process, then obviously that would go to the Ontario Land Tribunal for final jurisdiction. Now, I haven't been made aware of any objections or concerns that have been raised over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And it would be my opinion if nobody objects this evening, that council would be in a position to adopt the amendment this evening as part of your council session. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, we'll open it up to the public first, and then we'll open it up to council if there's any questions. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to the amending bylaw? If so, please come up front. There's a microphone. Just give us your name and address, and we'll write it down. I don't see anybody rushing to the microphone. Okay. Is there any member of council with a question or comment for Glenn? Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to ask, when you say you consulted with staff or work with staff, did that include county staff as well?
Yes, county staff have had the opportunity to review. In fact, they did provide written submission to the bylaw. So I reviewed their concerns as part of the process.
Good. Anyone else? Okay. No other questions. Thank you very much, Glenn, and to your sister. He's been around our table for many, many years and has done a good job. That's why he's back. Okay. Thank you, Glenn.
Much, members of council.
So our public meeting is now closed, and we will go back to our regular agenda. Okay, and we left off at staff reports. So our first one is development services. Andy, construction report. Oh, before that, I've got a motion. I pulled up. Go ahead, Andy, grab your seat. I have a motion moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy. The council received comments from the public meeting and consider passing the bylaw updated in 2022 as amended by bylaw 2022-61 and now being amended by bylaw 2023-47 later in the meeting. Lots of bylaws numbers there. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Right. Now we have our building inspector. Okay, I have a motion moved by Susan Irwin, seconded by Danny Meeks, that council received the construction detail report July 2023 as prepared by the manager of development services CBO for information. Any questions or comments from council? Anything you'd like to add, Andy? Is it slowing down at all?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's, I'd say, remaining steady. I've got about 15 applications in the queue. Other than that, I don't have anything to add to this report, but the floor here it still needs 2 more coats. This is just the first coat there that was completed today. So
it looks great.
It's coming. It needed a little more work than they expected. There was a lot of patches that they had to replace the boards, so it took a little longer than expected, but should be finished this week.
Yeah. It's a big job for sure. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Next, Public Works, Tyson. The first one is the activity report moved by Danny Meeks, seconded by Susan Irwin, that council received the Public Works activity report as prepared by the Public Works manager dated August the 8th, 2023 for information. Questions or comments? Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Tyson, thank you for a great report. Really great job on it. I also wanted to thank you for arranging the garbage pickup at the caboose. That was very nice. And I've had nothing but great comments on Westport Road. Like, really good job on Westport Road. The residents are extremely happy, and the guardrails all look great. The work that's been done. From your report, I've got 3 questions or 2 questions. You say on here that road signs, are being done, straightened as, they see fit. Are council allowed to submit a list of road signs that are crooked? Would that be helpful or not helpful at all?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy, first of all, thanks for the compliments on the work. The guys have been working hard and also trying to get in some of their vacation in the last couple weeks here. As for the list of signs, you feel free to send some if you're noticing them every day, but we're schedule's pretty packed for the rest of the summer, but we try to get to them inside of little sites that we've already got set up for safety or as we see them, but not in a position right now with to be able to set aside a time just for that job.
Okay, my other question is, in your report, you say that you have the tender out and working with the county on the Oak Lane Bridge. We had approved a project along the trail by Hampton's Landing. When do you anticipate to put out an RFP on that, or have you? And when will that work be done, or will that project be carried over till next year?
Councillor Gowdy, that we met with Richard Allen from Frontenac County last week about the Oak Lane Bridge project. And his comment was that he's still working with the county treasurer to see what funds are going to be remaining available for that project. So I can take that down and report back next meeting.
Okay. Lynn.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just had a question about the line painting on the Arden Road. It had been done before they did the construction work, and I'm wondering if it's going to be redone after the road resurfacing, or does the road need to sit for a certain amount of time before it can get done?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Clagus, if the project goes as scheduled, we'll still have it's the high volume of traffic that determines how fast that will pack in and how fast we can get it painted. For example, Westport Road, because of its volume, got packed really quickly and we were already painted a section of it. So we're still going to try to paint it this year because it is nice to have the lines for the winter. But we also don't want to waste paint either. So we have to judge it by how nicely the center line packs. We hope to.
Duncan.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for your work last week with the camping at the government docks. Several of the people who complained to me last week were very satisfied this weekend there was no camping. So I know it wasn't just you, it was all the members of staff, but thank you for getting that wrapped up so quickly. The second comment is I've had a lot of positive feedback about the way you did the guardrails this year. So pushing the sand back and actually cleaning it up rather than just whippersnipping it turned out really nice. And then the last question, what was the cost of the garbage collection at the railway park?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McGregor, thank you very much for the re-encouragement there. The guys are working hard on the guardrails. I'll comment on that quickly for that actually hasn't been done on the whole stretch of 38. I think it's been over a decade since that was done. And our mechanics actually built something for the grader that goes on the grader blade that can push through the guardrails and that we might be able to every couple of years stay on top of a little better. And I'll put the bug in council and the public's ear now that we are looking into spraying. Now that that job's been completed, we're looking at spraying around those guardrails next year, and possibly we've approached South Frontenac in about a joint tender, so we can try to stay on top of that and not have students hanging out on the back of the guide rails every year. I'm fairly uncomfortable with that. So we'll see how that goes over with the public, but that's what we're pushing for. You'll have to ask me that question again at the end.
The cost of the garbage pickup at the railway park.
Sorry, I'll follow up on that. I believe it was $40 per pickup. But I will follow up with Noah as he set that up with the contractor. But what we tried to do was go off of the original garbage tender. Right in that tender, there was the option of additional pickups. So I'll follow up next meeting with that cost.
Just to follow up to that. So that was last meeting, council gave the direction for staff to bring a report back so council could make the decision. So that decision, I guess, was made by staff without council's review.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McGregor. Yes, that was discussed in a manager's meeting, and based off the procurement policy, that was I got authorization to go ahead with that.
Okay, Susan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, I'd just like to echo Duncan's comments about your quick response to the signage at the government docks. I have to say that whenever I've brought a matter to your attention, you and the rest of the township staff have been very prompt in responding. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin.
One of the issues that is coming up in a couple of places is our parking spaces. And the fact that there are boats on trailers that maybe are sitting there for, like, in one particular parking lot 3 years without being moved, and the need for maybe a weekend parking or a day parking for people. We're just getting more and more people coming, and parking issues are getting more and more. We're going to have to build parking lots somewhere along the line, I'm sure, and not just in the village, but around the beaches and boat ramps. Good job. All right. So all those in favor of the motion? Carried. All right. Next we have Public Works Charlotte Lake Village Reconstruction Grant Funds Report. This is moved by Susan Irwin and seconded by Duncan McGregor, that council received the Public Works Charlotte Lake Village Reconstruction Remaining Grant Funds Report as prepared by the Public Works Manager, dated August the 8th, 2023 for information. And further, the council authorized staff to begin planning a public engagement initiative to gather the community's interest in utilizing the remaining grant money to make improvements to the south end of Matthew Street, the beach parking lot, and the medical center road area. Discussion. Philip.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just wanting to know if that grant funds are just for that purpose, or can it be used anywhere in the village for another purpose? Because we have other things that we could look at as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith, the wording of the grant is was originally the Charlotte Lake Village infrastructure upgrade. And it all depends on, it's an application process to try to get it approved to spend that money. So we are open to, as you can see by the numbers, we're not going to be spent, even if this proposed work goes through, we're not still going to be spending all that money. So any proposed work from council will be taken into consideration and could be put into the application. Well, of course, if the public agrees.
Okay, Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, could you give me a definition of what infrastructure is? So is it just roads, or can it be for other facilities?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Gowdy, all I can confirm for sure is anything similar to what we did in with the major village upgrade initially. So sidewalk, parking, crosswalks. There is certain beautification items that were approved. When you say other facilities, you have to be more specific, but I can confirm that underground infrastructure isn't covered. So we do have to keep that in consideration, similar to our last extension that we applied for, as we wanted to improve some above ground infrastructure like road, crosswalk, sidewalk, and parking areas and green space. We got to keep in mind there is sometimes infrastructure underneath that really should be replaced before we put new surface over top, and that is out of our own pocket. So
Through Madam Mayor, and thank you to Nikki and Philip. You stole my thunder. So, I don't think I have anything further to add. I'm just what about pedestrian signs or crosswalks, say at the seniors home? Would that be an infrastructure item, or are we strictly roads kind of thing?
through Madam Mayor, Councillor Irwin, what we can do is we can reach out to we've got a connection at the funding organization that's pretty good for doing its best to answer that type of question without going through the actual application process. We can ask about the crosswalk. I can't picture them going for that just because it's so far outside of the scope of the original contract. But it's worth asking, and I do know the ministry doesn't like to give the money back, or we don't like receiving the money back from municipalities. So,
And we don't like giving it back either. Philip,
So I guess a washroom might be a step too far.
I think a washer might be too far. Yes. Now, I would like to let council know I'm open to any of Nikki. You said other facilities. I'm open to any other suggestions. So.
I was thinking the washrooms were my first choice, but the second thing is to the beautiful downtown revitalization was a trailhead building. That was my other thought.
I can't picture them including a separate building inside of the infrastructure application, the original extension of the original application, but I think we'd be better off sticking with kind of street infrastructure.
So then to follow up, Madam Mayor, what would Cannon Road up to the Legion in that area? It's a really rough road. It needs some attention. It's within the village of Sharbert Lake. Would that be something that could be included with that extra money?
We can definitely include it as a request. And this kind of circles us back to what we're asking of council in today's report. As we've seen before, we had all these ideas and didn't have the public's buy-in. So I'm looking for council and our mayor's direction on how to get the public engaged with this conversation in a positive way that we can all work together to put a proper application. Because the way it works is after we apply, there's still a 4 to 6 month waiting period to hear back. So the project wouldn't happen until 2024 anyways. But it's if we knew right now, if we had someone in the room right now that could tell us, yes, you can spend it on this, you can spend it on that, it'd be a lot easier. But every one of these ideas has to have a pretty intricate estimate done, and sometimes even some engineering and some to get a contractor or a consultant to give us quotes on it. So that's why we really need to put our heads together and try to figure out which direction we want to head with this. The work that we've proposed, I know it's not all of it, but that's what was some of it's what was on the original contract. And so that's already engineered. There's already engineered drawings for that work and stuff like that. So it's we really have to engage the public on this one.
Michael, and then we'll get to you, Duncan.
For Madam Mayor, Councillor Gowdy, I looked up the original grant. One of the ineligible expenditures is land, buildings and other facilities. So just to answer that question. Ineligible, sorry. To this.
Okay, Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, is there a deadline of when we have to spend the money? Because I'd like to see the scope of the project expanded so we can spend the full amount if we have an opportunity for it.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor McGregor, as far as I know, the money was originally supposed to be spent by before 2025, and we have been notified that you can apply for an extension. So once we get a bit of a plan together for what we want to ask for, we're going to ask for it, and then obviously ask for an extension to make sure that we plan it properly. But that's as far as I know right now, 2025. But we really have to focus on what we want to apply for before we bombard them with too many questions. So,
Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, you said a few moments ago that you're looking for council's direction on what type of public engagement. So do you have any suggestions to us, or are you looking for us to give you a suggestion on how you should approach the public?
Through Madam Mayor, Councillor Gowdy, I am looking for suggestions on how we'd like to approach the public on this. We have in the past done open houses. That was pre-COVID, and now there's quite a bit more virtual engagement that we can do. We've also now got a staff member that's really good at that kind of engagement. So I'm open to any way, but I want to get it going this year. I want to get it going immediately to start getting the community's buy-in.
I think one of the things you have to do is have a plan together with suggestions of what could happen where, and then try to get your public engagement. I don't think it's fair to ask the public what they think. I think we need to say, here's what we're suggesting. What are your comments? Because everybody wants their road done. The one that I was thinking of that really is very close to the village is Dixon Crescent, that has been put off for probably 17, 20 years now. And it's basically back to gravel with some potholes and some hardtop that's still kicking around. But the village in itself can be expanded from what we look at when you start looking around, like the backside, the Cannon Road side and Dixon Crescent. So I think we need to take a bit of time and put together a complete plan of possibilities and then have a public meeting. And have a public meeting when we've got, you know, drawings and suggestions. Duncan and then Susan, and then we're going to call the motion we've read here.
Tyson, you have a pretty good grasp, it sounds like, of how you want to get the public feedback. The only comment I'd make is with the Matthew Street project and during the election was very few members of the public actually understood the funding itself. So there was a lot of negativity towards it as why the money was going towards Matthew Street as opposed to a road outside that area. It'd be nice if the public knew exactly the scope of the funding and what we had to spend it on.
Okay. Susan?
Through Madam Mayor to Tyson, just making clear what is ineligible would help to focus the public as well.
And just to add to that, the maps that were in our package, I could not really understand what was going where. So better maps. Okay, let's move on then. Any more burning questions for Tyson? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. So once we get a plan together, we'll hold some public meetings and open houses and see what the public think. All right. That is it for Public Works. I'm now going to turn the motion. Dan, do you want to hand that over for you to take the chair? Come and sit in there.
Okay, so we have a motion moved by Lynn Clegus and seconded by Duncan McGregor. The council received the checks distribution report totaling $2,046,445.29 as prepared by the treasurer for information. Do we have any questions? Oh, Nick.
Thank you. Michael, we usually get the check payables list. It wasn't attached this time. Yeah.
Here, I'll show.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Kelly. I apologize who missed that. All these should be attached each time, so. Between the two of us, we caught other things, not that. I apologize. Send them out to council and let me know if you have any questions.
Do we have any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. There'll be questions later after you send out the information.
Thank you. Moved by Duncan and seconded by Susan that council approve the following apportionments of assessment as recommended by impact for 2023 as applicable for the following roll numbers. And there is a lot of them there. Any questions on any of those or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Next, we have motion moved by Susan Irwin, and seconded by Lynn Clakus, that council for the Township of Central Frontenac approve the following reduction of assessment pursuant to the Municipal Act. Rule number 1039-080-030-02500. Young, Robert Charles, and Lorraine for the period of March 19th to December 31st, 2023, as reported by impact reason, raised by fire, demolition, or otherwise, 357 1DI. Rule number 1039-040-020-026,000, Forche, Rock, Joseph Jean, Paul, for the period of May 22nd to December 31st, 2023, as reported by impact reason, raised by fire, demolition, or otherwise, 357 1DI. And for the council approve an adjustment of taxes to be calculated by the tax department for the related periods. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Oh, this one seconded then. Okay, thank you. Okay, moved by Duncan McGregor. No, Duncan, Susan and Dan, seconded by Dan, that council accept the arrears tax sale property summary update report as prepared by the treasurer for information purposes. Any questions or comments on the report? Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say this is a great report once again. I had a question in regards to the 30 properties that are in tax sale position. And it states that there's 10 that were started in 2023. What's the status of the other 20?
Through Madam Mayor, Councillor Smith, they are at different stages. Some of them have been paused if people have contacted us before the farm debt mediation timeframe is up and made arrangements. It doesn't have to be a legal tax sale extension agreement at that point. So some could be in that position. Some can be problem ones. There's 3 at least that sat on my desk. That leads me to another first for tonight, that in the last 12 years, we've had a tax sale every fall. We will not have one this year because there was a miscommunication between myself and the company that we use. And those 3 problem ones that we had to look into took myself a while to get back to. That unfortunately delayed all the other ones. So we will have twice as many in next year, which gives the owners a little bit more time to potentially pay off the taxes that are owing. It's very unfortunate because I think people have come to expect us to have one each year. So there's definitely some frustration that day.
Our mistakes may be good for a number of people. It's a tough time for people to buy groceries, let alone pay their taxes. One of those necessary evils, they say. Okay, any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. Mountain Grove Cemetery Memorial Day Service Report. Moved by Danny Meek, seconded by Susan Irwin, that the report submitted to the treasurer by Judy Gray of the Memorial Day service at Mountain Grove Cemetery be received for information. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. The Oconto Cemetery one is coming up and it's done by different churches year about or something. All right, moved by Danny Meeks, seconded by Susan Irwin, that council accept the revenue and expenditure budget to actual variance report as prepared by the treasurer for the period ending June 30th, 2023 for information. Any questions or comments on that? Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just ask if Michael could highlight anything that's of particular importance. Midway through the year, it's hard to tell if it's good, bad, or ugly.
Through Madam Mayor, Councillor Smith, utilities, heating, and as you alluded to, there's a few different things when I go down to. So every time I do this, and for Councillor McGregor's benefit as well, obviously I look at 50%. Midway through the year, anything under, over, more so over on expenses and under on revenue. and I print off the high level, the mid level, and then I go down to the GL level. So on the GL level, there's a couple things where I can need to adjust back and forth. There's a couple notes that I let the department heads know to watch if something's over that 50%. But when I'm thinking back and reviewing it again this afternoon, utilities, hydro, and again, it depends on the winter that we get. As I noted in there, you know, the volunteer fire pays were a little bit more, but as I understand from the fire chief, we have calls that are up. There's very good reason that they're there, and I'm very thankful that they're there. So that's not a cost. I'd look, you know, it comes down to heat and hydro, really.
Okay, Duncan?
So thank you for pointing that out for me, because I'm still having a hard time with this report, but based on these, so far we've made it through 2023. How do you see us ending up at the end of 2023 for staying within our budget?
Through Madam Mayor to Councilor McGregor, it's about the same as each year. It's hard to predict. It's hard to predict in September. It really is. That being said, there is a forecast report that the FMW software company is working on to try and give a better predictability of where we're going to be at as we try and get into budgeting earlier in the year. Everybody always wants to know where we're going to end up. And I even know in February, April, until the auditors are finished, it's really hard to say whether I've missed something or somebody else has missed something. I don't have any major concerns right now as to where we're going to end up. I think I'm trying to think back to last year, at least for the expenses, we were in the same as I noted. So it's so hard with the timing of capital projects as to what comes out. Like I can look at certain lines and I'm always obviously looking at the number and saying, well, this is so much more than last year. Well, it's timing. A lot of it's just timing. So I wish I could say, here's the crystal ball. The one year I think I was within 30,000 of the prediction for Councillor McDonald at the time. It just feels harder and harder each year to try and hit that crystal ball correctly.
Well, and every time you go past the gas station and it's up to like $1.70 a liter, you go, oh, there goes our budget right there.
Well, and I'm always nervous about giving a number and going, God, you were wrong. Not the first time.
And it won't be the last time. Nikki?
Speaking of budget, are we still anticipating meeting for budget in October? It would be late October.
County is October. Yeah. So even if we did, yeah.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Cowdy, I have for the first time in 12 years booked off 2 weeks of the 1st of October. So we're shooting for October 30th might be the earliest. We talked at the managers meeting this morning about rolling forward the year and trying to get to that. So hopefully we'll have something before the end of September, but there's a lot on the plate.
Okay.
So first part of November, potentially. But yes, I'd like to do it earlier this year than.
Hunting season's always a good time to do budget.
Is it?
I got 2 looks from that side of the table. Okay, any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Oops. All right. Moved by Susan Irwin and seconded by Duncan McGregor that council authorize the vesting of the properties listed under attachment A, and further that the properties indicated be declared surplus to allow for the next steps to be undertaken as per the recommendations. And further that any proceeds received from the sale of a surplus property stemming from the tax sale process be directed to the tax sale recovery account. Discussion. I thought we didn't get tax sale money.
We get the failed tax sale money. If the property is over $10,000 when we register it, we have to share with the county and the school boards. Or if we were to vest the property and sell it within 7 years, then we also have to share that. If it's after the 7 years or under the 10,000, we do not have to share. There is about $140, I think, that we have to share here.
Okay. Oh, so many rules. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, that is it for finance. Now we are at fire and emergency services. Come on up, Chris. I have a tickle. I need, I
Like one of these?
think I've got one.
All right.
I do. All right. We have a motion moved by Lynn Clegg, seconded by Duncan McGregor. The council received the Central Frontenac Fire Rescue Report and the Central Frontenac Bylaw Enforcement Report as prepared by the Manager of Emergency Services / Fire Chief dated August 8th, 2023 for information. Discussion. Nikki and then Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, when you look at the calls for each station for the month, is there any way that you can break it down to say it's one call, but 3 stations responded, so it doesn't look like, I don't want to say duplication, but you know, that you had many stations responding to the same call. So it's one call, but each station gets credit for going to one call, so their numbers all look higher. I don't know if I'm explaining that well.
So you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Galley, note that's the software set up so they are recognized for running the calls. We have to identify that, and it also has to be identified through the OFM Fire Marshal's office when we get our quarterly report through.
Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 2 questions. One is on the call logs, and just wondering, last year we seem to have a lot of fires, and this year it's like 1 per station. So is that correct? And then the second one, I just wanted to ask about the hazmat training that we're talking about, and just wondering if that is being done internally.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith, yeah, we're doing a good job in fire prevention, actually. So our fire calls are down. And as far as the, sorry, what the second last, the hazmat is being done internally. Yes, that's to finish off the level 2 course. And then that just got approved by the Fire Marshal's office, that lesson plan. So.
Duncan.
My question's around the bylaw numbers. So the first question I have is, moving forward, could we see how many of those calls resulted in a fine to the, I guess, the person they went to?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Duncan McGregor. No, we don't have the fines. Actually, what we've been doing so far is the cleanup and then putting it back on the taxes. My experience in doing this in the last year has been pretty frustrating for getting compliance. The fines don't seem to get the compliance. We don't see the money for the fines that goes to the county. So let's get it cleaned up, get it done. So Kennebec Road was one that I sat on for over 2.5 months. I finally said, let's get it done and put it on their taxes. Unfortunately, I'm dumping that on Michael's lap with that, but we have 2 properties that we've had ongoing for almost a year, and we've got them both cleaned up now. And that's the way I'm going to continue. The message is going to get out there that we're not doing this anymore. We're going to get these things cleaned up.
And I guess just as a follow-up is, what's stopping people from doing it all over again?
Well,
Especially the Henderson one we just cleaned up.
yes. So my theory and the way it's always worked for me and the fire inspection side is, once the word gets out there that these things are getting done and people are watching this and it's being policed by the public, that they're going to find out that this isn't going to be tolerated anymore, and they actually get it done. So I think it's a positive.
Duncan?
Sorry, just to follow up to that. So I'm actually not talking about the zoning bylaw infringement. I'm talking specifically about like the regulate and control noise and why there wasn't a fine issued for that kind of call.
Through Madam Mayor, to Councillor Duncan McGregor, I can't say to that. I know that there's been warnings put out to that, but I have not heard of anything. That would be on our contract with our enforcement by, yeah. Unless I authorize them to do that, it would have to be, they would not probably do that.
I can further say that we would have to get a report from Leanne as to which ones have gone and what, if they put in any fines. So, okay.
So yeah, in our agreement, we have for that contracted services, she's actually required to provide that report to us so that we can see how many fines were issued.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't give us a report.
No. You'll do a report in regards to where she has been and which calls, but she won't say which ones have them in the fines because they have to take those to court. And like I said, we don't get any money for it and we don't hear anything about what happens. It all goes to the county, all that money.
We do get a bigger bill from the contract though, when they go to court, because we have to pay for that. So, you know, that's something we can look at and do it if it's going to cure the problem. But quite frankly, I don't think that's going to get us the compliance we want with the noise.
I think we really have to take a look at the system where we don't have to go to court to collect the fees, the administrative, whatever that. Yes, that, because that then at least you would have a better chance of getting the money than spending $1,000 for $100 fine. That's what it costs for a lawyer to go to court, or for the bylaw enforcement officers. They could spend 2 days in court for a fine. In our bylaw, that's $100. So we need to look at our bylaws as well as how we enforce them. Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question in regards to if the county's getting those fees, why do they get them? How come we don't?
It's under provincial offenses and it gets paid into the city of Kingston, and then the county gets a portion and it's taken off our levy as it comes out. So we owe
eventually
that.
get something from it then.
Over the years, there hasn't been a lot of people paying fines, so it's been a small amount of money. We could ask the county what that number is. I don't remember seeing it in our budget stuff, but it's not huge.
Just to add to that, the collection of those fines is almost, it takes forever.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that. I know that in New York region, they were over $11 million in outstanding fines that weren't paid. They finally had to hire somebody to actually do the collection.
It was a high number in Frontenac County as well. It was huge.
I can ask county.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Lynn, sorry.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. First, I just wanted to say thank you for the cleanup that's been done on those two properties. I've had many compliments of thanks for getting it done. People appreciate seeing the cleanup. I was shocked when I went by the one property, the difference it made. And just to clarify, so who's paying the bill for the cleanup?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Clegg. So that's going on their taxes. So it'll be actually the owner of the property that will end up having to do.
But
so
we pay the bill.
Yeah, we give like a 60-day. We send out numerous letters to the property owners to give them warning that we are going to do. We actually send an additional letter letting them know that we are sending a company out, a third party to clean it up. So
go ahead.
So that's a good deterrent for people wanting to do it in the future, knowing that that can be put on their tax bill.
Unfortunately, in this case, I don't think it's the owner of the land that did it. I think it was the absence of the owner being on the land that it happened. Which is my concern as to what's to stop it from happening again. If it's not fenced, if it's not gated, if there isn't some boulders so that vehicles can't get back in there in the night to dump again, we need to keep a close eye on it, because if they're doing it now, chances are it will go back that way as soon as we stop looking. Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, just one question for clarity. So with property standards, you make the call as to whether the cleanup happens, not by law.
yes.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Next. Oh, here's I need a seconder, Dan. Good thing you sat right beside me, eh?
This resolution is a little bit more detailed.
All right.
It's in the package.
Okay. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Dan, that council received the telecommunication tower report as prepared by the manager of Emergency Services / Fire Chief, and that the current tower at the Parham Station was damaged as a result of the Derico windstorm in May 2022 and would not survive another storm, which would compromise the communications system through the municipality. And that this purchase and offsetting Derico funding was not included in the 2023 budget. But now that additional funding is available, it's anticipated to move this project forward and complete it this year. And that the procurement policy allows non-competitive contracting when it's necessary to ensure compatibility with existing products or to avoid violating warranty guarantee requirements when service is required. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the manager of emergency services, fire chief, to accept the quote from Bearcom Communications to install a telecommunication tower and the required equipment at Station 4, 1282 Wegerville Road, Parham. And further, that the funds allocated to this project would come from the Derico funding in the amount of $117,993.63 and the balance of $61,393.99 would come from the fire reserve funds. And that the manager emergency service / fire chief be authorized to proceed to retain Bearcom to complete the installation at station number 4 and issue the necessary purchase order. That's a long one. Questions and comments, Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple of questions. If the tower was that bad, why did we not budget for it in the current year? And 2, if just wanting to know, have you spent all the money that was allocated in this budget for communications? Because if not, that would be a good opportunity to use those funds instead of reserves.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith. So if you recall, we did discuss our options at budget time for a lease, and council did not feel comfortable with the lease. And then we talked about it, the master fire plan. So we agreed to the 6-year term of going through 6 years of at the $78,000 approved. So that's why when the Derico money came in, I thought this was an opportunity for the storm. So that's why we didn't do the antenna. The antenna would have been done next year. So as far as going forward with this, it's just an opportunity for us to try and move this project ahead another year to get more of the equipment. The money that's been spent so far is being spent on portable radios and mobile radios in the vehicles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, can I request a recorded vote on this?
Sure.
As well, please. Second of all, to follow up on Philip's question, you said you have 78,000 budgeted in for the lease of equipment. So
Just to correct that, that's not a lease for purchasing. So the lease got scratched.
okay. But you budgeted 70, you said that there was 78 in the budget. Have you spent that 78? Because would it not offset the 60,000 you're asking out of reserves?
So I spent 78,000 on radios right for this year. So with the Derico funding,
So a follow-up question then, you now know where you're sitting with your budget. Is there anything that you have come in under budget that you could take out without taking from reserves? I'm not comfortable with taking out of reserves, as you know, so that's, but
could we say that the balance would come from fire reserve funds or the budgeted surplus or budget surplus? So if there is a budget surplus in the fire budget, that 61,000 could come from that. If not, then it would come from the reserve fund. Michael, how much is the fire reserve fund approximately?
300.
There you go.
300 is so much less.
Okay, sorry, Madam Mayor. So right now, without 2023 numbers in here, we were sitting at 712. So if we pulled 66 out, we'd be just over 650 thereabouts. And I hate to count on the bonuses, but the one thing I did forget to mention budget quarterly is that I think we budgeted 250,000 for interest revenue, and we're already at 275 midway through the year. So there was that, but you never know what other capital projects are going to go over. So I hate to bank on it.
Would you be comfortable if the motion read to come from the fire reserve funds or end of year surplus?
Yeah, we could easily just make it end of year surplus and or I can check at the end of the year if there isn't any surplus, then we pull it from reserves, or it's just
As a last resort.
It may not be the full thing either.
Is there any way we can say the 61,000 comes from next year's budget and not take it from reserves? Because we're terrible at putting money back into reserves. We're good at spending it, but we're not good at putting money back in.
Well, I think we're pretty good at, if we have a surplus, it all goes into reserves.
Yeah.
So we've built those reserves up fairly well over the years.
we have.
Duncan. What's that?
Okay.
The fire chief was just asking me about extra revenue, and we have had motor vehicle collision extra revenue. We have had a little extra revenues here and there. But I mean, again, the big one I can pick on is the bank interest. I have to, through Madam Mayor, Councillor Gowdy, say thank you for your comment and not paying back to reserves, because in the past, sometimes I have commented on that. I have to say that. And I do love putting money into reserves. But if this communication project helps, then worst case scenario, I would say, let's say there was a deficit, pull it from reserves and budget to put that money back into reserves in 2024. And then we're still applying what you want to do, but I'm keeping everything in isolated in its years to make things simpler in my mind.
That's a good possibility. If it's not there, then we actually raise and put it into the reserves.
Yeah,
Pay it back.
I can make a note to check, I mean, at the end of the year where we're at as well, and then retouch base with council.
Yeah. Okay. Duncan?
So it was nice to see that you tried to use provincial funding to complete the project or to complete part of the project. I can't vote yes for a project of this scale because it was sole sourced. The entire project has been sole source. It's concerning that the same business that did the initial study, the same business told us what we needed, and then they told us what it would cost. I can't see anything in this quote that's proprietary. The quote seems quite high to me. And I don't see anywhere in this report where we had sought out any of the other tower locations in Parham that are existing towers to try to make a rental agreement to offset the $180,000 bill.
Michael, the sole source issue. You're the procurement bylaw specialist.
I didn't review the report before, but I believe we talked about being specialized equipment and this being the best provider to go with, or the only provider that would work, because they already work with our radios and that, but that's more of a technical question for you.
Yeah, for sure. Through Madam Mayor to Councillor McGregor. So we went with Barracom because we've experienced their work in the past. I've worked with them for a number of years. I know them well. They do good work. They stand behind their product. There might be another company out there, but quite frankly, I think that for reliability and for 24/7 service, this is our best option. As far as other locations, they did do a propagation study for location of tower, and Parham was the best location for us to get coverage throughout the whole municipality.
So the entire project, there is certain pieces that there's proprietary technology or technology that needs to be compatible, but this looks like it's a tower build of 130 feet. When I say let's look at other tower locations, I'm talking about in the geographic area of Parham. So there's 6 or 7 cell phone towers in Parham that are exceeding 130 feet. We may have been able to have a rental agreement with, But the problem is Bearcom, who's doing the study for us, wants it to be their tower because then they can charge us $180,000 to build it.
I can't comment on that.
So what do we want to do? Shall I call the questions? Any more comments?
If you want to change that.
Oh, Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just so the funding we're getting, is that specifically for this project, or is this money that already came in from the storm? And if we don't spend it, can we carry it forward for this project? So could we earmark 117 and say, yes, this is what we want to use it for, and put it in the 2024 budget?
Through Madam Mayor, Councillor Smith, I'd have to double check the due date. The money came in for Derico funding for damage to any of our infrastructure that happened because of the storm, and this is one of those infrastructures. So that's why we're basically putting it to that. But in terms of the date, I can keep looking here as to when we have to spend it by, but it could be next year. Just want to double check.
Okay. Somebody else had their hand up? No? Lynn?
Thanks. So if we were to delay it till next year, what are the implications for the tower?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Clegus, it just puts us back the year back to the schedule we were at. I was hoping to see most of this done before I left Central Frontenac in the next couple of years. So if council wishes to put it off, so be it.
Okay.
It's damaged.
Would we want to change that section on the reserve funds to say would come from the fire reserve funds or any surplus in 2023? Yes.
I like the way that Michael phrased it.
Which was? I'll write as you phrase.
There was a couple suggestions that came out there, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Clegus. So I'm trying to remember if that was the one where we would pull from the surplus deficit. And if there is a deficit, we would pull from reserves and then budget for it in 2024.
That's what.
So if there is a pull from surplus pull from 2023 surplus deficit, if available.
Okay.
Sorry. No, and so pull.
If our bottom line is.
Yeah, if so, pull from the 2023 surplus if it's available.
Yes.
If there is a deficit, we will pull from reserves
And budget
and budget to replace those reserves in 2024.
Yeah.
If deficit. Pull.
If deficit, pull from reserves, fire reserves,
Okay.
and budget for its replacement in 2024 budget.
To repay, right?
Yeah, to
Correct.
repay it.
Okay, so would come from the fire service funds or pull from the 2023 surplus if available. If deficit, then pull from the fire reserves and budget for 2024 to repay. That's the 61,000.
And Madam Mayor, before we finalize that, the Derico funding period end date or expiry date is March 31st, 2024. So if things happen the way they have in the past and we don't get our budget approved till March, we're potentially going to lose out on that money.
Okay, all right, I'm going to call the question and it is a recorded vote. Philip Smith. Dan Meeks. Nikki Gowdy. Duncan. Susan. Bill. Lynn. Cindy's not here. Fran, yes. So 1, 2, 3 yeses and 3, 4, 5 no's. So it's defeated. Okay. All right. Next, we have moved by Lynn and seconded by Duncan that the application to remove the holding symbol, file number ZB0123 Keller, for the parcel of land known as Frontenac Vacant Land Condominium Plan 70, Level 1, Unit 9, Geographic Township of Kennebec, 1025 Ridge Trail be approved. And further, that zoning bylaw number 2011-52 of the Township of Central Frontenac as amended be further amended as per attached 3 draft bylaw and Schedule A to amend bylaw number 2011-52 included with this report, and that the amending bylaw presented to council for all 3 readings. Discussion.
I think Jenny's on, is she not?
Is there any questions? All those in favor? Carried.
Mhm.
Thanks, Jenny, but no questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to be available and have the map up in case there were questions.
Okay. Moved by Duncan and seconded by Lynn. The council received the CAO clerk's report entitled Appointment of the Integrity Commissioner and that Cunningham Swan Carty Little Bonham LLP through its lead, Tony Fleming, be appointed as the Integrity Commissioner for the Township of Central Frontenac effective October 1, 2023, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute an agreement with Cunningham Swan Carty Little Bonham LLP for the provisions of services of an Integrity Commissioner, and that council pass a bylaw later in the meeting to appoint an Integrity Commissioner for the Township of Central Frontenac, and further that a copy of this resolution be circulated to the county and to the townships of Frontenac Island, South Frontenac, and North Frontenac. Discussion. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Duncan.
So my first question is, why wasn't the entire scoring for the applicants included? Are we able to see the price for the other applicants?
They were not included. This is what I presented to you, what that was from the county. The county has sent us. And I can tell you right now that John Mascarin, who was was considerably higher than this one, but we did interview all 3. Okay.
Follow-up question to that was approximately how many hours are we billed a year? And I understand that number can vary, but what would be an approximate number?
I think that in past years, I think we've had maybe 2 investigations, and they probably cost us about anywhere from $15,000 to $2,000.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. And the reason we get a better price is because we do it with the county and the other municipalities. So it's all of Frontenac.
I was just naive on the fact that $295 an hour seemed a little high, but I'm a little naive on that.
Not at 650 or something.
We all missed our callings. We should have been lawyers. Right? Right, Susan? That's right. All right. Moved by Lynn Clakus and seconded by Susan Irwin. The council received the CAO clerk's report entitled Recognition of Land Acknowledgement for the Frontenacs for Information, and the council consider formally adopting a land acknowledgement to be included in the procedural bylaw. And further, that staff bring back to the September 12th, 2023 meeting for further discussion prior to adopting the procedural bylaw. So we have the county's suggestion in our package, and we have the one that we use. Discussion.
Okay, I can mention, and also the reason it's for to look at this, because I know Councillor Smith was asking about the national anthem, so that's something for council to consider. If you want to put that into the procedural bylaw, both one or the other, that is totally up to council. So so if you can provide us some comments, we'll bring it back on the 12th of September. And then, but this was waiting, did this first. As I mentioned to Councillor Smith, that this report was one done by all the county clerks. So I was able to provide all the information and where all the background came from. So that's just for information for council, and then we can further discuss what you'd like to see in the procedural bylaw.
Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually watched the county presentation during that section, so I heard their presentation and the comments of county councillors. The only thing I would say is I kind of concurred with some of their comments that it's rather lengthy, the acknowledgement. So the one we use is more concise. So I think that's probably best. And as I've expressed to both the mayor and Kathy, I would really like to see the national anthem played before our meetings as well. Or the mayor can sing, I think she
I was going to
suggested.
say, I'm afraid I would only get to do it once. You'd throw me out. Okay, so on this motion, are we good to have it brought back in September? All those in favor? Carried. Right. It's 7:34. We're soon going to need to have just a little 10-minute break, I think, eh? Let's do a couple more. We've got tons to go. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that council accept the report regarding the strategic plan for information purposes only, and further that an all-day session will be held September the 7th with Capital Park Consulting for council and the managers. Really? September 7th. How did you pick that date?
It was.
Well, Madam Mayor, in order to save money, we did this joint with North Frontenac
Yeah.
Township, and September 6th and 8th are dates that work with them. So we're really hoping that this works for council. We did look at potentially doing it afternoon and evening, but it's booked here. So we're really hoping that the day works for council.
Yes.
How is everybody's schedule for the 7th? You do know that it's Terry Fox Day, right? And
No, I
it's
don't, but we could run around the
Brunswick
block
Day,
if that
and
makes you feel
it's
better.
British Columbia Day, it's Strategic Plan Day. Ay. Okay. Yes, there needs to be food. Let's do it in a day instead of trying to do it at half a day and a night. Can be very long. Okay, so we'll put it in. You can come back to us with some times.
Yeah.
Yeah, once we have an agenda, the company Capital Park Consulting wanted to know if that date worked first, then they would send us out the agenda, and yes, we'll let you know location and times, which was here, Fire Hall, one of those two.
Okay.
Here.
Okay,
And we will have food.
good. All those in favor? Carried. All right. Moved by Susan Irwin, seconded by Lynn Clegus, whereas council directed that we proceed with this road closure pursuant to resolution 403/2022, that we proceed with this road closure on the basis of appraised land value rather than a land exchange. And whereas reference plan and appraisal have now been completed and staff wish to bring the bylaw to council for approval. This is road closure bylaw Mueller. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried.
It's carryovers in some of these.
Okay. Moved by Susan Irwin, seconded by Lynn Clegus. Whereas KFL&A Public Health has announced the upcoming closure of its Charlotte Lake branch office effective October 27th, 2023. And whereas KFL&A Public Health has approached the CAO clerk to see if the municipality would consider keeping the well water sample distribution in the community by bringing into the municipal office. And whereas the CAO clerk is confident that the staff can handle this program with minimal interruption to the other services offered to Central Frontenac residents, and is recommending to council to accept the program. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council accept the recommendation of the CAO clerk to bring the well water testing program in-house. Discussion. Philip.
I think this is important. If we can keep it here, we should do that. However, I would suggest that if any advertising needs to be done or whatever, to make sure that the program is advertised, to make sure it's staying, that we get the health unit to pay for that advertising.
And I think that Susan Taggart was certainly any questions that certainly if council have, and they've been pretty well forward so far, and we may have some staff be able to help in that. So they're negotiating all those things. So, okay, just so.
Because I definitely think we need to take a look at how it's going to work after, say, 6 months to see what kind of a interruption to the office it's going to be. Lynn and then Duncan.
I just wanted to clarify that they would be providing the fridge for this to have it there. I must say where I used to live in Uxbridge Township, that's the way they did it. And it worked very well. And it didn't seem to be an imposition on the staff there. But that's the way it always had been, and right up to the day I left.
Duncan?
Whose legislative requirement is it for the water test? Is it the municipalities or the public health units?
Public health.
It is public health, so we're doing them a favor.
Well, we're actually doing our residents a favor because there's a lot of people that get their lake water, their well water tested. It's a busy thing in the summer for sure. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Nikki?
I'm glad that the township has stepped up and offered to have the water testing done up there, but I'm a little concerned about the other programs that the health unit provides in this area. And I think that we just need to be diligent and watchful that we don't lose those services as well. That them pulling out of closing an office here just means that they don't forget that there is certain people north of the 401 that need services.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to do the minutes and then we're going to have a little break. Moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Bill Everett, that council received the minutes from March 15th, 2023 meeting of the Frontenac Community Arena Board for information. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Bill Everett, that council received the minutes from the Charlotte Lake Farmers Market meeting held May 7th, 2023 for information. All those in favor? Was there any questions or comments on that? If the rain stays away, they have good days, but I think even on rainy days, it's pretty good. Moved by Bill Everett and seconded by Dan Meeks, that council received the minutes and recommendations from the short-term rental ad hoc committee meeting on July 1st and July 20th, 2023 for information.
There's more.
Duncan.
So I'm hoping we can vote on the recommendation that came from the committee meeting on July 20th.
And what were those recommendations?
So the recommendation we made,
there's nothing on the
No,
on
we
the
left that, we had left that blank so that they can add that in.
Okay.
yeah, so
Go.
if everyone had looked at the recommendation is to try to deal with a lot of the complaints we're receiving about short-term rentals by using bylaw. So one of the things that we see is that bylaw is not accessible.
What are the complaints that you're talking about? Noise?
Noise, garbage.
Okay, there's no garbage bylaw.
There's a property standards bylaw.
Property standards, it's more about the grass and the.
So if I could just finish.
Go
So
ahead.
that our recommendation is that we post the bylaw enforcement number through social media, in the newspaper, and more accessible on the township website so that people have an avenue to lodge those complaints. And second, that we give direction to staff to give direction to bylaw enforcement to start issuing fines when they go to houses for these incidents.
We need the AMPs. We need to go to the AMP.
Well, and it's further not just aimed at the way that the committee looked at it. It's not just aimed at short-term rentals. Let's do it across the township as a whole and not go specifically at one area, because there are concerns being brought forward from other residents aimed at other things than just short-term rentals. And it is about fireworks being set off, noises. We are talking about them leaving waste in ditches and other areas. So it's not just property standards. You can't litter, so we would just like to see that bylaw actually is accessible and they go out and investigate all of these claims. And it's really hard when you go on our website to find the bylaws information, you have to dig through it, like looking for a fence viewer or looking for your livestock evaluator. They're not really up there. So if it's put on the ribbon that goes across the bylaw information, the ribbon that goes across the website, that would be easier. Chris is very good at posting things on the Facebook pages and stuff, and that's what we're asking for.
I'm just wondering, when you were talking, if the committee would look at some of the bylaws before we ask for them to be enforced. Like, for instance, the property standards bylaw, to see if in fact that bylaw is going to do what you want it to do. The noise bylaw. If you have a barking dog, then there are some recommendations from the bylaw enforcement officer that the person keep track for a number of weeks when the dog barked, how long it barked, and all that stuff before they actually go out and do anything. So I think a review of the bylaws we have to see if they are enforceable or if they need to be changed to be better enforced might be the first step, instead of just saying enforce them. Go ahead.
Well, my question is, we have all these bylaws, but we don't enforce anything really. So what I understand what you're saying and looking them over, and I think that's a great idea. I don't disagree with you, but why do we pass these bylaws if we're not going to enforce them? That's my pet peeve right
I've
now.
asked that question for years.
Mhm.
It's because something's wrong and we're going to fix it, but we never fix it. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is more for Kathy. If we go to the AMP system, how do we get a return of money if we're using the county bylaw enforcement officer?
Sorry.
What I propose is to provide council with further information. South Frontenac has AMPs, and the clerk, James, he provided a presentation at the Zone 6 Clerks and Treasurers. Very well done. So I would like him to come to sit down with staff and go through it, and then we can make the presentation to council as to how South Frontenac does it. And there is certain fines on that, and they do get certain monies, but I just can't tell you all the details until we do that. I think that's one step we should do as well, is look at that process as on top of all that. Because it's true, some of that we get noise bylaw. Yes, and maybe it's time that Leanne come under the Frontenac bylaw enforcement to do a presentation to council as to noise bylaws and what she does, and I think that would be helpful, and I certainly for the committee, because then you'll know exactly what she does, how they go out and about it, and getting the comments. So I think there's sort of twofold there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I agree with having her come out, because I feel that our interpretation right now is quite often when bylaw do come out, they just give warnings. People get warnings and they know nobody's ever following up any further on it. So the warnings just get ignored. And if it wasn't a warning and it was actually you are getting charged, people would think twice about it. At least after they heard that others are getting charges placed on things, they may stop doing some of the things that are happening.
Duncan.
So just a follow-up. I think one of the reasons why we can't enforce the bylaws is exactly that comment, like about dogs, where we're saying to the caller, well, record it over the next 4 weeks and we'll get to it when we get to it. When there's a party or when there's the loud noise happening inside of Frontenac, bylaw enforcement is expected to respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to that. And by the time they're actually dealing with the complaint, it's done. There is no more noise. So reading through the noise bylaw, which I have several times, I don't know why it's unenforceable. So unless someone at the table can explain to me why it's not enforceable, I think we should proceed with this recommendation. Just my opinion.
That's where we need to speak to the bylaw enforcement officer, because I don't know how they do it, but I do know they go out and they go out and they go out with these noise bylaws.
And generators she has, yeah.
Yeah. So, Philip.
Do we know that they do respond on weekends? Because I've called and never got a response, so.
I honestly don't know, but my guess is if it's 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning and there's a party going on where there's lots of noise, that they don't get there. And I don't know that it's safe for them to get there. They're not OPP. And often I think they probably say you should call the OPP. But OPP won't enforce our bylaws. Nikki.
I understand what you're saying, but again, in the contract, we're paying for that service and we're not receiving that service. Because like the contract says 24/7, we pay $1,400 and some dollars a month to keep them on retainer, and then we pay by the hour for them to come. And if residents are not getting that service, maybe again, let's go back to the previous meeting or when you had said maybe we have to look at hiring our own bylaw and having our own bylaw person. We something to consider.
Could we on this motion ask for the bylaw enforcement officer to come before council so that we can ask some of these questions? Sure.
So just to frame why time is of the essence is because as you see in the motions made at the short-term rental ad hoc committee, we want to do a bunch of public feedback over the winter. And we need everyone to have a clear head. So if we don't take the next month, which is the last month of summer, and start enforcing some of these things, we're going to go into the fall with only half the information we need.
But I think knowing how enforcement is going to work is very important to that. And I don't think any of us know clearly how the enforcement people work. And I think we need to find that out. Lynn.
If we contract them, are they not working for us?
Oh, yes. But
So
how
can we
they-
not direct them to work the way that we want them to work?
These are questions we need to ask them.
Because we do.
We
They do go out.
They do go out, but I don't know on what time schedule.
Can we minimally then at least put it on our website as to how to contact them? Because I think the general public really are not aware of if there was a problem, how do they approach it? And aside from calling the mayor or their counselor.
Yeah, certainly we can put the bylaw number up there. Because
So
they can call the township office. I don't think they call bylaw directly, do they? I think it has to come through the township.
No, I think
No.
they can call.
Oh, they
bylaw.
call them directly? Okay, so they can do both things. Call directly or call us and we call the bylaw.
So I'm willing to make the motion to follow the recommendation from the short-term ad hoc committee. So that's the motion I'm willing to
Okay.
put forward.
I'm going to ask for recorded vote because it's not doable.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so here, somebody finish. Rachel, what do you want in there? Because it's.
Before I write this, can you ask if we have a second for the motion? So I don't write this.
It's already, you've got
I
to go
guess
back
we
to the
need to
main
ask
motion.
Dan and Bill.
This is a main motion, so it's up to these two here. As the
Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Duncan, I agree and I have no problems with that motion, but I would like to amend it. I would like to amend it to include that we have have Leanne come out and educate us as well. So we want enforcement, but we can't, I guess our point is we can't get enforcement till we hear from Leanne. So I think the compromise is let's get the information out there. Let's get it on the ribbon and get it on social media. And then we have Leanne come to our next meeting and educate us, which is only September the 12th. I know it's not what we originally wanted, but I think that we get educated so we can go further with the right mindset on it. So I'm willing to second that.
I think that's important. Oh, sorry.
So,
needs to be amended. The first half of it is.
so let me just read what is here on the recommendation. That council directs staff to circulate bylaw enforcement information on our website, social media, newspaper ad, and any other appropriate places that inform residents of this information. Furthermore, that's the piece that I'm wondering the wording.
Frontenac Bylaw Corporation to our next meeting to educate us on their role as bylaw enforcement officers.
And they will have some opinions on our bylaws as well, I'm sure, which is what we need to hear from them, is what bylaws are too cumbersome or unenforceable.
And about
So-
the AMPs, if you want me to get.
And we need to get information on AMP, because without that, we're going to find people, it's going to cost us more than it's worth.
Mhm.
I'm happy with the changes. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Susan, do you just read the motion? No.
I may need fine tuning of this.
Fine tuning.
Okay, you go
But,
ahead.
but I will do that. And are you okay with that? We've got Bill and Dan. Okay, all in favor?
Actually, I have to do that, but.
Yes, I know.
So what you've added there is the social media bylaw number thing, and
Right.
that we're
That
going
staff
to.
invite Frontenac bylaw enforcement office to our next officer to our next meeting.
Yes.
To
Okay,
educate.
to discuss how they do their job.
Can we just,
Will they discuss the AMP?
No, they won't.
No.
They won't. I have to.
Unless-
Information.
Unless they do it for South
That's
Frontenac,
right, and I'm
and
not
then
sure.
they would know
They
about
would
it.
know. Mhm.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried.
I can still go ahead and get the information in regards to the AMPs, so.
We've got one more minutes thing to do, and then we're having a break. Moved by Bill Everett, seconded by Dan Meeks, that council receive the District 4 Recreation minutes from June 21, 23 for meeting for information. All those in favor? Carried. 10-minute break.
Then we can do the OPT detachment.
Bill, you did very well. You're not smoking?
Yeah.
Oh. I thought you'd be jumping up by now. All right, folks, we're back. And that goes up there. I have a motion moved by Danny Meek, seconded by Bill Everett, that council receive the letter of approval from the Ministry of the Solicitor General to Louise Fragnito, CAO of South Frontenac, dated Township or dated July 19th, 2023 for information. And this is about the OPP Detachment Board, changing from CPAC to a board. What is it called?
Yeah, it is the Ontario, it will be the detachment, the OPP Detachment Board. And there is representation, and I don't think we provided that information to you. There's more to come from the Solicitor General in regards to all the membership, but there will be members from each of the councils. I can provide that to you with more details to come. So, yeah, sorry, it is in here.
Yeah, the numbers.
In the numbers as to what our representation will be on the board. And yes, there will no longer be any CPAC committees.
Did they say when that's happening?
No, they just said more information to follow.
Yeah. It's been a couple of years now. They've been saying more information to follow.
Yeah.
All right.
Philip.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Philip.
So just the existing committee rolls into this new board then?
No.
Is that,
No.
no?
No, it's not. We have a whole new board. So Central and North Frontenac have CPACs. We will no longer have CPACs. It'll be a whole new board, which will include South Frontenac, North and Central and the membership.
Susan, go ahead.
Just, I'd like to request that the letter for information be circulated to the current members of CPAC.
They will get
Oh,
that
right.
time for that. They will receive that in September meeting. Yes.
Good. Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Right. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that council received the following correspondence for information. And it's 1 to 9 and 11 to 13. We've pulled 10 out.
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to deal with that separately.
Mhm.
All those in favor? Carried. Sorry, to 14, second page. Right. And this is the correspondence that we pulled, and it's letter dated July the 7th, 2023 from the town of Amherstburg, resolution in support of the town of Essex resolution regarding local emergency response system and gaps in healthcare regarding code red and code black frequency. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that council support the town of Amherstburg and the town of Essex resolutions regarding local emergency response system and gaps in healthcare regarding code red and code black frequency, and that staff send a letter of support to the Premier of Ontario, our local member of provincial parliament and member of parliament, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all other municipalities in Ontario. So this is the cost of first responders, basically. Okay, any further discussion? Nikki?
And it's about the offload times. Like that's, as we keep hearing over and over, paramedics are sitting at hospitals waiting for a nurse or a doctor to take that patient. And which means then our first responders have to go out and respond to the calls because there's no paramedics to respond to those calls. And, costs are going up, our calls are going up. We're not getting any money from the town, from the provincial government for it. The county only gets limited money. They can't reimburse us. So the squeakier wheel gets the grease, and the squeakier we can be, I think it's better for everybody all around.
And it's the hugest part of our fire budget is first response. Okay. Oh, Susan, go ahead.
Through Madam Mayor, I think the problem is at the hospital, they're not able to unload the patients. And that's a provincial Ministry of Health funding issue.
Problem.
And
Sometimes our paramedics are 6 hours.
Yeah.
Trying to get a patient.
Oh, I'm fully in favor of supporting it. I just recognize that the problem is
and
lies with our provincial authorities.
Hotel Dieu was doing really well up until probably, I think, the last year. The paramedics said it's gotten so busy with the emergency rooms now that they just can't get patients off their care. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. I think we should turn the heat on. This is costing us money to be this cold. It does not make sense to me at all. Anyhow, onwards, bylaws. Thank goodness we're towards the end. I'm frozen. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that bylaw 2023-45, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2011-52 zoning bylaw, as amended, as it relates to the removal of the holding symbol for 1025 Ridge Trail, Garrison Shores, Arden, Township of Central Frontenac, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 8th day of August 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that bylaw 2023-46, being a bylaw to permanently close, declare surplus, and sell part of a highway legally described as part of the unopened road allowance between concession 7 and 8, Olden, being part 1, 13R 22-875, and being part of PIN 36-225-020-0261, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 8th day of August 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that bylaw 2023-47, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2011-52 zoning bylaw, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed on this 8th day of August 2023. All those in favor? Carried. I thought we had just done this one, but.
Although we're doing the bylaws now.
Okay, moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Getty, that bylaw 2023-48, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy clerk for the Township of Central Frontenac, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed this 8th day of August 2023. All those in favor? Carried.
We have to, after Cindy no longer, so now.
It's in the background.
In the background, it does, yeah.
I think you're right. I think we should put.
You could put it Jody League.
Appoint. Being a bylaw to appoint. Oh, it's being a bylaw to appoint the clerk is the headline, so it doesn't go in there.
But it says up to here. You could put deputy clerk, appoint a deputy clerk, and you can put her name in. You wish.
Okay.
Jody.
Leqgue.
There you go.
All right, Jody. All right, all those in favor? Carried. You're stuck now.
But you're doing a great job. So.
Maybe at this point, we should mention the movement of staff in the office.
Sure. You don't want me to do that now? Or do I want to do it in September meeting?
Well,
how long?
It's kind of, it's done, isn't it?
It is done, yes.
I think we should mention it now.
Yes, we did the internal interviews for the internal candidates, and as they actually for the
position.
Well, therefore the building inspector position, we did that. So Crystal is now the building inspector. So she's going to not building inspector, but the septic inspector. The next is for the planning and development services assistant, who also is going to be the secretary treasurer for the committee of adjustment, replacing Crystal. Get all these names ready. And that's Janice Cahill. She did very well in her interview, and that's who is going. So she's moving from the front counter, and she's moving, actually, we're putting her in Jody's old office. Jody is taking Cindy's office for the time being till we get the back sort of position there. And then we had Madison Cowdy was successful as the applicant. And so she is going to be now working for us full time instead of as a student. And she's taking on the role where Janice was at the front counter. So got all the movement within, and everybody's doing well. They started today, all the new, and of course, we have Elena, who's been our summer student, helping us out, and she's doing a great job, and she's come to watch council so that she understands the whole, and I think she already knows a lot of the things with being on council. I think council at school, right?
Well,
So-
plus her grandma was the clerk treasurer for many
Many
years
years
in Olden.
With
Judy
Judy,
Gray.
yeah, that's right, so. Okay, so
Okay.
that's what's happened, and then there'll be further in regards to the planning manager that we talked about, that'll be coming up and advertised for that one.
Okay. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that bylaw 2023-49, being a bylaw to appoint the integrity commissioner, be read first, second, and third time and finally passed this 8th day of August, 2023. All those in favor? Carried. You got your name in the motion and Tony didn't. Okay, is there any, let me get to my agenda here. Any notice of motions?
No, there is not.
Any giving of notice of motion?
No, there is not.
Any new or other business?
No, other than I want to just thank Mayor Smith and Councillor Irwin for looking after the afternoon at the office for the afternoon. Staff had the appreciation, and certainly our what was it? Oh yeah, our farewell to Cindy. It was quite funny because she thought she was going to get thrown overboard on the boat because she was leaving. I think she got a couple people had said that to her. They're going to throw her over the boat, over the boat. But all staff really enjoyed it. We had a great afternoon touring the upper end of the lake, and we had a barbecue and had some games. So thanks to council for going ahead and certainly supporting us in this kind of endeavor for the staff. I think it was well attended and certainly well liked, and they certainly I think Susan and Fran did a great job at the office. I don't know how many people they actually came in to see them, but
Well, I think some knew we were there, so they came on purpose, but no, it was okay. And that was a good staff morale booster as well.
absolutely.
All right, so we will move by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that bylaw 2023-50, being a bylaw to confirm the regular meeting of council held August 8th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and finally pass this 8th day of August, 2023. And further, this meeting be adjourned until 6 p.m. September the 12th, 2023, said meeting to be held Soldiers Memorial Hall, Charlotte Lake. All those in favor? Carried.